I told him, I said, you have got a lot of fans in the 6th Congressional District of Kentucky.
That's right.
Admire the oversight, the work that you do, and I can't think of a group that's more interested in the work that you do to vindicate the service and the sacrifice of the men and women in the armed forces and the 4 Americans who gave their lives in Benghazi. Than Trey Gowdy. And so it is with great respect and appreciation and gratitude that we welcome Trey Gowdy to the 6th District of Kentucky and welcome him to say a few words to you all. Thanks, Trey.
I want to start by saying thank you for your service to our country, and I will end by talking about that, but I'm also going to start by talking about it. So thank you for your willingness to Kentucky, but I have grown fond of this one. Number one, he works incredibly hard. Number two, while he's a great lawyer, he's also got a good financial mind. He's on financial services. Those of us that are prosecutors, we might be good in murder cases, but we're not good on banking cases. So if you got a lawyer who's got a background and an understanding in financial matters, heavens knows our country could use that. You ought to keep them. I don't travel much. I got a really good-looking wife. I live beside a golf course. And my probation officer is a jerk, so it's very hard for me. But I told Andy, I said, okay, I'll come for 2 reasons. This is the only test I apply on whether or not I'll travel. It's not whether I gotta go through Chicago, it's not whether or not I gotta go through Atlanta. I got 2 rules. Do I like the member of Congress that has invited me to come, and do I wish there were more of him or her in government? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, I'm willing to get up early and drive to Charlotte and fly to Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm glad I did. So, get back with me. 2.5 years. I'm cutting the backyard because my wife hadn't done it yet. I'm tired of looking at the grass growing in the backyard. She doesn't even know we have a lawnmower. I'm cutting in the backyard. And I go inside and I see I had missed a phone call from John Boehner. First thing goes through my mind is, what have I done wrong? Because John Boehner never calls me. Actually, the first thing I thought was, how did you get my cell phone number? Because I'm kind of particular about who I let have it. So I listened to the message and said, I need you to call me as soon as you can. So I called him and he said, I am thinking about having a special committee to look into what happened in Benghazi. And I said, okay. And he said, and I'm thinking about putting you on it. And I said, I would be honored. He said, don't say anything about it. I'll call you back this afternoon. So I went and cut the front yard. And I came in and he said, we're going to do it, and I want you to chair it. And I tried to talk him out of me chairing it because I hadn't been there very long. I care about it. I wanted to be part of it. But being the chairman, I didn't have a background in it. Let me tell you what he never said. He never mentioned Hillary Clinton's name. What he said is, I want you to find out what happened to our 4 fellow Americans in Benghazi. And for 2 years, I was motivated by the fact that there's something even more important than the presidential aspirations of a former Secretary of State. And that's people that we send into harm's way, whether it's diplomats, whether it's soldiers, whether it's former soldiers who are now working as contractors. There are still some things, believe it or not, there's some things in our country more important than somebody's presidential aspirations, like finding out the truth about what happened to Fort
Amen. That's right.
So the challenge I had was there had been 6 other committees that quote investigated what happened in Benghazi. 6 of them. Let me just say, as an old washed-up former prosecutor, it's always best to be the first one to investigate something, not the 6th. And it's always better to do it as close to the time something happened as opposed to 2 years later. But I couldn't control either one of those. I couldn't control the fact that there had been 6 other committees, and I couldn't control the fact that we were in 2014 and not 2012. But what I could control was this. We're going to interview the witnesses. witnesses that were on the ground that night. We're going to interview all the witnesses in the military chain of command. We're going to interview all of the witnesses at the State Department. We interviewed well over 100 witnesses. Now, I know my friends in the media are obsessed with one person that we interviewed. I'm obsessed with the eyewitnesses. I'm obsessed with the men who survived the firefight. So we interviewed well over 100 of them. We accessed tens of thousands of documents. And guess what? The other 6 committees had missed a couple of things. One of the questions I had was, why didn't we get to Benghazi in less than 13 hours? Imagine my surprise when I learned, well, one of the reasons we didn't get there is we never were headed there. The decision was made to go to Tripoli and not to Benghazi. And then I started wondering, well, I wonder why Chris Stevens was there. It's a dangerous place. It's in the Civil War. It's post-Gaddafi. The man's asking for more security. He's asking for more help. You ought to read his emails, which, by the way, the other 6 committees didn't bother to get. Read the emails by your ambassador the morning of his death, where he is predicting something bad's about to happen. I think it's important to know what was on Chris Stevens' mind that morning. If he was afraid of rocket-propelled grenades, if he was afraid of the situation in Libya, you ought to know that, and you ought to be able to question the person who created the situation in Libya. But this is the dominant thing I came away from those 2 years with. I don't know the politics of Sean Smith, Chris Stevens, Glenn Doherty, or Tyrone Woods. I have no idea whether they're Republicans, Democrats, Bull Moose, Whig, Libertarians, no clue. I know that they were fellow Americans, and I know that they showed a valor and a heroism that would make every one of you who ever served proud. The fact that Glenn Doherty went and got a private aircraft. Not a government plane, those weren't anywhere to be found. A private aircraft and flew from Tripoli to Benghazi because his brothers were under siege. And then they landed at the airport in Benghazi, and the Libyan shield that was supposed to be helping us, they're supposed to be our friends, trying to get them to go other places, and they said, no, we're going to where our guys are. In less than 15 minutes after Glenn Doherty arrived and he'd taken his position beside his fellow soldier Ty Woods, the murders came. This band of people protesting a video had mortars. What gives me comfort is they died together. And what gives me comfort is they died doing exactly what soldiers do, and the fact that they were ex-SEALs, and once a SEAL, always a SEAL. I'm not getting into that ex thing. They were soldiers. And they died doing what soldiers do. And if it hadn't been for mortars, they would have survived. They were winning the firefight. We have the world's most powerful military, and I think it is fair to ask why we couldn't get to Libya in less than 13 hours. I think it's fair to ask why not a single real or a single American aircraft was rolling towards Libya when those mortars struck. Sean Smith and Ambassador Stevens were killed hours before Glenn Doherty and Ty Woods. So what did we do in the interim? What effort did we make to get there? And then what we learned is at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the White House convened a secure teleconference. None of the other committees told you this because they didn't bother to ask. You know what they were talking about in Washington while Glenn Doherty and Ty Woods were in a firefight? Whether or not we were going to hurt the Libyans' feelings by showing up in uniform. I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't read it. Who was going to ask permission to enter Libyan airspace? And that's where the video began. Half of the action items that came out of that White House meeting dealt with a video. Now I want you to ask yourself, if you knew that video was involved in Cairo, how did you react from a military standpoint? The protests in Cairo happened hours before Benghazi. This is the anniversary of 9/11. It's Northern Africa. In Cairo, there had already been a protest at our embassy. How did we respond? We didn't do one single solitary thing. The world's most powerful military did not have a wheel turning towards Libya when Glenn Doherty and Todd Woods were killed by a mortar attack. I think a country as big as ours is big enough to ask that question and have it answered. Yeah, we do have the world's most powerful military. But when your refueling planes are in England and the action is in Northern Africa, or your planes aren't operable, or your drones aren't armed, I don't mind asking those questions. We are the world's best, most powerful military. But that doesn't mean you can't ask questions of the people that made the decisions that night. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you hadn't already done it, I'm not asking you to read 600 pages. Just read the summary. Just read the summary. You can read the whole thing in less time than Ty Woods was being shot at that night. You can read the whole thing. But I realize people have lives to lead and other things going on. Just read the summary. Your takeaway will be this, that there are men willing to do extraordinarily courageous things for their fellow Americans. And I wish the people in Washington had had the same sense of urgency and valor and ingenuity that the guys in Libya had. I wish they had the same sense of urgency. If they had, I don't know that anything could have saved Chris Stevens and Sean Smith other than a different policy in Libya, but Glenn Doherty and Todd Woods might be here. I told you I was going to end the same way I began. I came into Congress a little bit before Andy did, and I used to, we were flying into Reagan. Maybe you can relate to this. You fly into an airport named after Reagan, into a city named after Washington, and you look out the left-hand side of your plane and you got monuments to Jefferson and Lincoln, and every building's named after somebody famous, and every road's named after somebody famous. And you look out that side of the plane and you get the distorted view that that's America. The leaders whose names we know, that's America out that side of the plane. And then about midway through my first term, I said, you know what? I'm proud of our history. But if you look out the other side of the airplane, you'll see these very gently rolling hills punctuated by elegant white crosses. And most of us can't name 5 people there. So what is America? A left-hand side of the plane, or is it the right-hand side of the plane? To me, it is the nameless, faceless men and women who cared enough to serve and sacrifice. And if you can ever get out of that plane and go ask them, this is what I'd ask them. Was it worth it? Have we become what you wanted us to become? Are we the country you wanted us to be? And if there's any hesitation, and most soldiers I know, they would salute and they'd say, I'd do it all over again. What? But if there's any hesitation at all, then those of us who are in government need to do everything we can to make sure that hesitation goes away and that we are the country that you served and sacrificed for. God bless you. Thank you for letting me visit Kentucky, and Andy will be happy to answer any questions you might have.